Hello, everyone. Welcome to Start the Week with Spencer. This is our weekly live question and answer session where we take questions from the audience. But today is also a special day. It's something we do once a month, which is called Victory Day. And on Victory Day, I actually report on some of the gains that children have had here at Doman International in the last month on the Doman International program. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to share a slideshow of of different children on the program, different victories that they've had while on the program, while on the Doman International treatment. So if everyone gives me one moment, I'll pull up my screen and I'll start to go through the presentation. Give me one moment. Okay, and by the way, if you hear some sound in the background, it's just because there's a child here in our clinic at Doman International and making some noise in the background. All right. Okay, hopefully everyone can see my screen now. Yes, it looks like everyone can. Okay, perfect. So today is Victory Day, and let me start by bringing you through some of the achievements of different kids on our program. So I want to start with Mila. Mila is 8 years old and has a diagnosis of developmental delay. And I want to begin first by talking about some of Mila's victories on her journey on the program. And let's start with reading. So a year ago, when Mila, began the program, she had no ability to read, right? So at that point, she was 7 years old, almost 8, and she was struggling even to, kind of sound out letters or syllables. And reading was a very distant skill. It appeared that maybe perhaps Mila would never learn how to read. And of course, that was very frightening for her parents and very upsetting for Mila. So about 6 months ago, at her prior visit to Doman International, finally she had not just learned how to read words; she could read sentences. Which you can imagine, to go from being unable to read any words to reading sentences, that's a huge development, and especially in 6 months' time. And her ability to recognize words and forming those sentences and reading them developed. Now, in these last 6 months, since her last visit at the European campus of Doman International, Mila has made an incredible leap in her reading. She's not just reading children's books, but is also doing so aloud and silently. So she can read out loud and silently. Reading silently is a very important ability because when children read silently, they read faster and with better comprehension, right? The faster someone reads, usually their comprehension improves. Recently, Mila picked up 2 books, each with about 40 pages, and read them silently in just one day. This demonstrates not only her growing reading ability, but her enjoyment of reading, right? We don't just want children to be able to read, we want them to enjoy reading, right? So here you can see a picture of Mila reading one of those books, and she's becoming a bookworm, and in a year's time, time to go from being unable to read at all and, kind of parents being told your child might be dyslexic, they never read. Now she's reading 40-page books on her own, out of her own accord. That is a huge transformation. Now, that's not the only area where Mila has transformed. We can also see this in her mathematical ability. And so Mila, before the program, had no math ability. She now can not just recognize numbers, but she can add and subtract numbers up to about 20. And we did this with Mila by showing her addition equations on cards with the answers on the back, right? And Mila, after the right amount of repetition, was able to show she was getting it. So here, look at some of those equations: 18 minus 7 plus 3 in the photo, 14 minus 8 plus 2. I know even some adults that would take a little bit of time to get that done. And here you can see Mila's doing it on her whiteboard as part of her math program. Now, she has also grasped multiplication, and she's grasping basic principles, and she's learning her multiplication tables. Here you can see her learning her twos, right? But also she's learning other multiplication equations as well. And so right now, Mila's big goal is to work up to learning all the multiplication tables up to 12. So that means she would even know, 12 times 5, 12 times 8, 12 times 12. That's her next big goal. And then we'll move on to division with her. But Mila has gone from being a child who couldn't do math to now she's doing multiplication, and the other kids in her class can't do it. So she's kind of like ahead in class. So that's given her a little bit of swagger when she goes into school, which is pretty amazing. Here you can see Mila, and in the photo, you can see she's showing off a medal that she earned, and you can see her doing all these different physical activities that are actually triathlon activities. You can see her swimming, running, and biking. And this is because she's really physically excellent. 7 months ago, Mila found it difficult to dribble a ball, to control it, right? And that was because of both issues with coordination, but also vision. Being able to focus as a ball is moving, it can be very difficult for children with visual convergence issues. Now, Mila can bounce the ball over 80 times without losing control, right? So imagine the amount of visual attention that's required to dribble a ball 80 times without stopping. So this shows her better hand-eye coordination, concentration, and just her perseverance, right? She's really now, as what we've seen with Mila, and we see this with many children on our program, is as she becomes more and more successful in different skills that previously she found so difficult, now as she gets better and better, she becomes more confident. So when she encounters the next thing that's difficult, she's like, who cares? I already mastered reading, which I thought was impossible. I already mastered multiplication. Now I'm one of the best math students in the class. What's this new challenge gonna, be for me after everything I've overcome? And so she's very, very tough and resilient, which is, I would argue, just as important a skill in today's world as anything else. Now, also, Mila learned how to skip rope. It was very challenging for her at first. By the way, skipping rope is very difficult for me. If I get three times, I'm proud of myself. So like Mila, I struggled with the rhythm and coordination, but Mila, on the other hand, much better than myself, has made incredible progress. She can now skip almost automatically, maintaining a steady rhythm for longer periods of time. And that shows a great improvement in physical coordination and stamina. Let's take a watch of a video of Mila. So I counted 10 there, which is really, really good. And you could see how fast she was going as well. Amazing job, Mila. Here, you'll also see a video of Mila hopping on her right leg. Hopping is one of the highest physical abilities that humans have, because it requires you to use one leg in a dominant role. And this is a skill which is very difficult for children with special needs. Many children, even if they learn how to run, do not master hopping because they cannot put all of their balance on a single leg and use it. So Mila, a few months ago, could barely do 2 to 3 hops on her right leg without losing balance or running out of energy. Now she can hop more than 20 times on her right leg in a row. This showcases the growth in her balance, strength, and overall physical endurance. And we've got a video of her hopping here. Yeah, so Mila making it look easy now. So when we look overall at Mila's huge progress in reading, she went from being unable to read when she started the Doman Method program to reading 40-page books silently. She's mastered addition, subtraction, and is doing the same with multiplication. And as I showed you, some amazing, significant strides in her physical abilities. So that was Mila. Congratulations to Mila and to her family. That is superb. Well, next we have Valentin, and Valentin is 3 years old, and his diagnosis was trisomy 21, also known as Down syndrome. And when we look at Valentin's development while he's been on the program, his family heard about the Doman Method when he was quite young. And so they really got started when he was 10 months old. And at that point, he just babbled, right? He didn't say any words. And as he progressed, he started to make more meaningful sounds, meaning he was making sounds to communicate his needs. Like he would laugh when something was funny, or make angry sounds to communicate that emotion, or sad sounds if he wanted something. So meaningful sounds. I'll come back to that video in a second because I want to talk a bit more about his speech development before I talk about it. So this transition, right, actually led to him not just speaking in words, but also pairing words together in 2-word phrases, which are called couplets. And now he's speaking even up to 6-word phrases, 6-word sentences, which, by the way, Valentin is 3 years old. Even average 3-year-olds are often speaking in short sentences. So the fact that he's saying up to 6 words is a huge achievement. And his pronunciation of words has gotten clearer, and that allows him to communicate his needs and wants. And so at Valentin's appointment, he came and saw our team in Miami. I was very impressed. I heard him speaking. I was very impressed by his articulation with many words, which, as many people know, is a big challenge for many children with Down syndrome to speak clearly. And so we do have a video here of Valentin talking. So let's watch this.
Yes,
He's saying, see me.
Hola, Mabel.
Saying, hi, Mom. He's saying, I'm going to eat.
¿Qué va a comer?
Waffles.
Waffles.
He's saying, I'm going to eat waffles.
¿Con qué?
Con mi mayor.
Dígale, ¿cómo está Moca?
Moca.
Y Grady. Pide unos besitos, pues.
At the end there, Mom said, give them a kiss. I think she made he made this video for a family member. I do speak some Spanish, but I'm able to understand Valentin's pronunciation, even with my limited Spanish ability. Must be a mistake. It says currently Valentin can speak approximately 25 words, but actually he speaks much more than that because he's able to say even 6-word sentences. So I think that's just a typo. I believe he says hundreds of words at this point. Okay, in terms of his physical skills and mobility, Valentin is starting to hop and run, a significant step in his gross motor development. He also enjoys dancing and does so frequently. He shows a lot of confidence now in movement. When he started the program at the age of 10 months, he couldn't even crawl on his belly, right? He had no way of kind of getting around. And so he had to learn how to crawl on his belly with the inclined floor, which is, one of the foundational Doman Method programs to get children moving. He learned how to crawl on the inclined floor. Then he crawled on his belly on the flat floor. Then he got up to creep on his hands and knees, and then learned how to walk. And so he began standing and walking independently, and now he has started to run. His balance and coordination and confidence are improving, and he's doing more and more complex motor functions. He's also begun to jump and hop, demonstrating further growth in muscle strength, coordination, and control. And he loves to dance, apparently, whenever he has the chance, and it shows his enthusiasm for movement and physical expression. So let's see, I think I've got a little video here. We'll watch maybe 10 seconds of Valentin dancing. And you know, something that may not be apparent from watching that video, in addition to him dancing, you might have seen he was actually singing some of the words along with the video. He was also doing certain physical movements. There's a part in the song about the hands, and he was actually looking at his hands and putting them out, showing that he has this ability to physically imitate, which is a great skill to have. So congratulations to Valentin and to his family. Amazing achievements there. Now we have Elisa. Elisa is really special because now we get to talk about an adult. We don't often talk about adults on the Doman Method program, but there are many. Elisa was diagnosed with a developmental delay, also called a psychomotor delay. And Elisa, her level of understanding has dramatically improved while she's on the program. Her content of writing now is at a high school level. And before it was at, you know, a middle school level. So it might have been at like a 10 to 12-year-old level. Now it's at a high school level, which is a huge difference. You know, if you're able to read and write at a high school level, you can hold down most jobs, but at a middle school level, you know, not quite. So that level of achievement is really, really good. Elisa improved her ability to express her desires and choices, showing maturity. Her ability to write improved both in sentence structure and grammar. And she's even able to write long and grammatically correct text messages and emails. In terms of her language, Elisa's speech, clarity, and content has improved. She has increased her ability to communicate her long-term goals and her personal aspirations. Oh, she is fluent in English and French. She speaks some basic Spanish, so she's really someone who is at least trilingual. And she loves to study languages, and that is, it's kind of her passion, is linguistics and languages. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And I think for anyone who has a child who's a young adult or an adult would understand why this is so important. She's developed the ability to travel independently using public transport to school, right? So she can get to school and back home without needing her parents' guidance or help or talking her through it. They can just know that she's safe and can take care of herself. So the huge achievement for Elisa, and the Doman International staff are so proud of her for this. She received her high school diploma this year. You can imagine at the age of 25, how hard Elisa has had to work to get that high school diploma. And listen, in most of the world, a high school diploma is necessary to get any kind of job or career that, you know, that most of us would hope to have, you know, and so for Elisa to get her high school diploma is a huge credit to how far she's come and to her family as well, who has worked with her and supported her along the way. And even more exciting, she's enrolled in university. She was accepted into university, and she's going to be studying civilization and modern foreign languages. That's a superb. I just can't overstate how important this is for Elisa. And this is truly special, maybe even harder than getting accepted into university. The Doman International staff invited Elisa to come to our European Institute, where she's come many times for visits, and we invited her to come as an intern. And so for 2 weeks, she actually lived and worked with the staff and helped out our team. She worked on various projects, and as you can imagine, being an intern at Doman International isn't easy. You know, there's a lot of it expected from you. It's not a vacation. You know, we expect you to show up on time, complete assignments, follow through on projects, take initiative. And so Elisa had a huge success as an intern, and it was really amazing because she had the opportunity now to work alongside the coaches who had been creating her Doman Method program in the past. And this invitation for an internship is not something we do with many people. We really have to trust that the candidate's going to be successful and work along with the team, and not just work along with us, but actually give something more, like give more than they can take. And so this was a huge achievement for Elisa. From a physical development standpoint, Elisa learned how to swim this period. She does some extraordinary things. She brachiates. You can see in these pictures here, you can see in the top right-hand corner her swimming. In the bottom, you can see her running, and she is a really fantastic runner. And then on the left, you can see her brachiating, meaning she's moving across those monkey bars, sustaining all her weight. And one thing that may not be obvious to people watching right now, the older you are, the harder that is. Brachiating independently is much easier for a 4-year-old who has a light body weight than a 25-year-old who has a lot more body weight. And so the fact that Elisa can do that is phenomenal. You know, I bet if we went onto the street and pulled 100 random adults off the street and asked them, can you brachiate across those monkey bars? My guess is that 5% of them could do it would be impressive. My guess is probably 2% of adults off the street could actually do that. And so the fact that it really means that Elisa is in tip-top physical shape compared to most people. So congratulations to Elisa and to her family. We cannot, again, I cannot overstate how important this achievement was to her and to her family. Well, that is Victory Day, and I see that people have been joining in. I see Corinne says hi, and Quenny says hi on Facebook. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm really glad, you know, especially for those of you who are new to the Doman program. It's great for you to hear about the victories that children have on our program. So now I would like to segue to questions that people in the audience have. So whether you're joining me right now on Facebook, YouTube, or on Instagram, go ahead and start typing your questions into the comments box, and I will answer them in order. Let me make a couple of quick announcements while I'm waiting for your questions. So, you know, first of all, Doman International has some very exciting trips coming up where we're going to be seeing families all over the world. Doman International's headquarters are here in Philadelphia in the United States. That's where I am right now. And so we see families here in Philadelphia throughout the year at our clinic. However, we do trips around the world where we see families in different areas. There are actually 10 different locations where we see families around the world. So just to give you an example, later in September, starting on September 21st, we're seeing families from the Balkans, in Serbia, and in Croatia. In October, we are going to our European Center in Pisa, Italy, where families come from all around Europe and the Middle East to have their children evaluated and have customized programs created for them. So that's going to be starting on October 21st. In November, starting I think on November 9th, we're seeing families in Bangalore and New Delhi, India. In December, we see families in California, in Santa Barbara. I hope I'm not missing anyone here. In February, we'll be seeing families in Miami, Florida. And then we see families throughout the year at different sites like Philadelphia, India, Russia. We have staff located in different parts of the world where children can be evaluated and seen. All right, let's see what questions we have coming in. I always recommend that everyone gets their questions in as soon as possible, because sometimes the questions all come in the last few minutes of this Q&A and I can't get to all of them. Oh, Milena says grazie. She's saying thank you. Milena is the mom of Elisa, so I'm really glad that you're here, Milena. Congrats to you, to everything Elisa achieved. Okay, I have a question here from Janet. And Janet is asking, what do you think about primitive reflex integration for brain injured children? Do you think it's beneficial? So, you know, first of all, Janet, we do the stimulation of some primitive reflexes on the Doman program. So some primitive reflexes like the light reflex, which is the pupillary response to light, the startle reflex, which is the reflex to loud and sudden sound, the Moro reflex. We also do a form of patterning called ATNR patterning, which is also a patterning formed on reflexes. We also do stimulation of the Marie-Foix. So there are many different primitive reflexes that we work with. So in that situation, yeah, we are, the Babinski reflex is also one that we evaluate and stimulate. So yeah, we're all about primitive reflexes. And in fact, I might, I probably shouldn't argue something if I don't have all the facts, but I wouldn't be surprised actually if my grandfather Glenn was the first person to actually talk about stimulating reflexes as part of treatment. I'll have to do some research into that to see if that's true, but I don't know if before him anyone ever talked about them, because when he created the developmental profile, which is the tool that we use at Doman International for measuring child development, when he created that profile, he observed that many children with developmental delays had issues with reflexes that other children who were developing normally did not have. And so when he observed that, he realized that, well, if these children have normal reflexes and these children don't, well, probably there's some therapeutic sense to stimulating those reflexes. So yeah, we very much agree and focus on sensory stimulation, and so or reflex stimulation, and those two things are interconnected. And so we talk about a bit about the reflex stimulation that we do in our books. So in the Doman Method book and in the Answering Autism book, we talk a bit about different kinds of reflex stimulation we do and how to do it, and then we get into more depth in the Doman Method online course where we talk all about sensory and reflex stimulation. I hope that's helpful, Janet. Quinny is saying, thank you so much. A big help and idea for our awesome. Okay, great. Thanks, Quinny. Thanks for joining. All right, let's see if there are other questions here. All right, I don't see any questions yet on Instagram. All right, I've got a question here from Corinne. Corinne says, when we started the program, how do we start? Oh, how many days do we come for? How do you do the evaluation? Okay, so Corinne is asking specifically about coming for appointments at Doman International. How does it work? How long are they for? How do we do the evaluation? So good question. So yeah, so first of all, Corinne, appointments at Doman International are 3 days long. So when the family comes, the first day of the appointment is really focused on us, the team, getting to know the child. So we do that through something called the functional neurological evaluation, where we evaluate the child and the different abilities they have using our developmental profile. The developmental profile is the best tool that we have found to measure child development. And so we run through many different, actually the developmental profile focuses on 42 major milestones, developmental milestones that a child should achieve so that they can be successful in life and in school. And so we evaluate a child on those 42 milestones. And so that's the first day of the appointment. Our medical director also sees the child and does a physical and approve the child for our program, basically to tell our clinical team what areas of the program can be done safely with the child. That's the first day of the program, of the appointment. The second and third day are focused on us teaching the family the different Doman Method programs to do. And there are actually 5 different meetings that the family goes through to learn the new program. The first meeting is the nutrition meeting, where a nutritionist meets with the family and tells the best diet and supplementation plan for that child. The second meeting is a mobility meeting where the staff teaches the family what are different programs the family should do to help that child develop in mobility, in balance, in coordination, and in manual development. The third meeting is a cognitive program meeting where we discuss, how are we going to improve this child's comprehension? How are we going to get this child reading and doing math? How do we help this child with communication, right? So that's all in the cognitive meeting. After those 4 meetings, there's a 5th and final meeting with the director called the overview. And in the overview, of course, we answer any final questions that the family has, but we also create a schedule for the family that kind of outlines how is the family going to kind of build up their program over a monthly basis, but also a daily schedule on how the family each day can kind of go through the different recommended activities in the most effective and efficient way possible. And so that's what the appointment looks like. It's 3 days long. And as I said before, we do those appointments all around the world. We also do appointments remotely on video conference for families who are unable to travel. And so that's what an appointment looks like, Corinne. Hopefully I've answered your questions, Corinne. Of course, if you want to fill in anything else, you can. Colleen, do you mind if I bring you in here? I'm sure I missed certain things about the appointment. Anything else to add?
I mean, you ran down obviously, because you do them, you ran down the particulars really well. I guess the one thing I'd like to add is that the families who come for their appointment, often I'm the one who has registered them, and then I get to hear afterwards what they thought, how it went for them. And invariably, they just are so thrilled that it's so comprehensive. Other places they've gone, because obviously there's a lot out there, but other places that families have tried, they said have not, I'm sorry, we have a new cat and she's very clingy, have not given them quite as well-rounded of a program for their child as we do. So I think that's very valuable for parents to know that our staff really cover every area of development, because I know that's not always the case in other places.
Thanks, Colleen.
Yeah.
But I should have introduced you. Colleen is the Director of Representatives at Doman International. She's usually the first person that new parents speak to on the program. So thanks for your input, Colleen. Okay. I have a question here from Francesca, but Francesca, I might need you to give me more details here. Are you considering the use of IA? Maybe I think you mean maybe AI to help brain injured children, artificial intelligence. Are we considering the use of AI? Well, actually, in some ways, Francesca, probably some simple ways we've already started to use AI. The 2 things that actually come to me immediately is that for some cognitive materials, our parents have started to use AI to help them. So, one of the best things about, AI like ChatGPT, which is one of the most commonly used AI tools out there, is if you go to it and you say, write me a book for 6-year-olds about, Amelia Earhart. AI is able to do that. And I have to say, I always, of course, would double check something before I show it to a child. But I have to say that when I've done that, I'm quite impressed with what it creates. And that is important. It can drastically save parents' time. And especially if parents have a hard time coming up with creative things for their child's cognitive program, it can be helpful. Also, we've used AI in some ways for language development tools for children. But that being said, Francesca, we're still really kind of like looking into AI. We're still trying to better understand it. I have certain people who have urged me to, that the Doman, using the information that we've collected for many, many years, we could potentially use AI to help with, picking out what are Doman method treatments that are more successful with children with specific issues. Of course, those are things that our staff, because we have decades of experience working with children, we've learned, but perhaps AI could also be helpful in that way. Francesca, if you have any thoughts on AI yourself, I'd love to hear them. I'm always open to learning new things, and there are probably some things I haven't even considered yet. All right, I have a question here from Tanya, who's saying, can children with a diagnosis of autism become schizophrenic when they grow up? Does it have anything to do with each other? So, Tanya, this is I do want to say I'm no expert in terms of mental disorders, and I don't want to pretend that I'm an expert on, schizophrenia. But what I understand is that it seems like there are many mental disorders that, similar to autism, they present many of the similar symptoms. A lot of gastrointestinal issues, a lot of inflammatory issues, a lot of anxiety or increased hyperactivity. And so, interestingly, with many of the Doman Method programs that we do with children, we often will see a decrease in symptoms that might be considered psychological, right? So, for example, if we have a child who, it's very common, for example, when you see teenagers with autism, might have also been diagnosed with anxiety, to give you an example. And we often see with different parts of the program a reduction in mental issues like anxiety, depression. I'm trying to think of other potential things, but we often see an increase in social engagement with children. And the reason for that is many neurological issues can present themselves as symptoms that appear mental, right? So, for example, the vagus nerve, which is part of our nervous system, controls our fight or flight response. Now, that is a part of our neurological system, the vagus nerve. But if it's dysregulated, it can appear with mental symptoms like anxiety, lack of focus, a lack of willingness to socialize. And so often when we do those programs that help the vagus nerve, we see a reduction in those things. And so I believe that if we can do Doman Method programs with a child, like improve nutrition, the kinds of physical activities we recommend certain auditory treatments like the Safe and Sound protocol that can help stimulate the vagus nerve. Very often we'll see a reduction in those issues. And I have to say, having seen many children grow up with a diagnosis of autism on our program, keep in mind, we've been doing this for 70 years. And when you've done it for 70 years, you see people grow up on the program and now are adults. And it's not like I hear from families who used to be on our program, oh, my child is showing symptoms of schizophrenia. I personally have not heard of a single child who grew up on the Doman Method program who had schizophrenic symptoms later. But that, I'm just telling you that from my memory. I can't say that for certain. So hopefully it's because the same lifestyle programs that the child is implementing, because we've recommended it for their brain growth and development, are also helpful for those kinds of mental issues. Okay. Thanks for the question, Tanya. That's an interesting one. I don't think I've gotten that one before. All right. I've gotten a bunch of questions on Instagram that I haven't started answering yet. So sorry, Instagram. I will get to these now. Sandra is saying, what are the exercises for visual convergence besides crawling, creeping, and brachiation? So Sandra, of course, you mentioned crawling, creeping, brachiation. Those are basically the top three. I would also add to that patterning, because the different forms of patterning, like cross patterning or ATNR patterning, depending on the child, help develop the midbrain. And the midbrain is the low region of the brain, which controls visual movement, right? So, it's interesting. Our ability to see the world around us is an ability that is controlled by the cortex, which is the highest level of the human brain. So right now, your ability to see me is the cortex, but your ability to move and control your eyes, like me doing this, that's the midbrain that controls the eye muscles. So any program that helps the midbrain will help visual control and convergence. So certainly patterning can be helpful as well. For those of you who don't know what patterning is, we do talk about patterning in the Doman Method course. It's one of the physical activities that we do with children. Sandra, there's also a tracking activity that we do with children to help develop convergence. And I'm looking to see if I have an example, something I can use. Well, I'm just going to grab whatever's closest to me, right? So what we'll do is with convergence tracking, we'll take an object, right? It should be a small object that the child can use to visually follow. So I'm not sure if you're able to see my eyes on the video, but we'll have the child follow that object in different patterns and in different directions. And that challenges the eye muscles, them to actually control the eye muscles and track that object visually. And so often when we do this kind of visual tracking over time, we see the child day by day getting better and better, right? Because what we're doing is we're actually improving the connection between the brain and the eye muscles, right? Just like how we use our brain to move these muscles in our arms and legs, we also use them to move our eye muscles. And very often children with special needs have rigid, tight eye muscles. And that makes it very difficult for them to make eye contact, visually track. And so by doing those kind of tracking activities, we can help develop the brain-eye connection even better. Good question. Oh, I do want to say those tracking activities can only be done with certain children. Some young children, for example, just won't be willing to do it. So usually, we would use it with children more 4 years and up and who, have some ability to kind of focus visually on a specific object for some time. All right, on Instagram, we have a question from Garden Queen. Where are you based at? So Garden Queen, our headquarters are in Philadelphia, but we see families in 10 different locations around the world. I won't go through all of them right now because I said them earlier in the presentation, but what I recommend, Garden Queen, is send us a direct message on Instagram and tell us where you are. So just shoot us a message, say, I'm in this place, can you help me? And then we can, Colleen would actually get in touch with you and talk about how we could be of help for you. Sandrak is saying, for the next year, 2025, do you already have the schedule? And so actually, our clinical team has finalized the 2025 schedule. Now, Sandrak, the much bigger question is, do I know it off the top of my head? And unfortunately, I don't know everything off the top of my head. But what I do know is I know we're going to be at our European Center in Italy in January. That I can say. I know that in February, we're going to be seeing families in Australia and New Zealand and also in Miami. I know that in March, we're going to be seeing families in Serbia and Croatia. In April, we're going to be seeing families again at our European Center in Italy. In May, we're going to be in India seeing families. So those are in June. I know we're going to be in seeing families in California. And then we see families throughout the year here in Philadelphia. But Sandrak, if you're interested in, an appointment in a specific location, type that in and we can get you more details. Okay. Talamum is asking, hi, I would like to implement the Doman method in my kindergarten in Morocco. How can I do it? Where can I find resources to implement that? Thank you in advance. So Talamum, the best thing for you to do actually is go to our website, domanlearning.com. There are courses and materials there that you can use to implement the Doman method. So there are videos there that you can use to learn about the programs. I'm actually teaching the courses. And then there are also materials that you could use. And for example, there are English materials, but you could use that to teach English as a foreign language to your students. So yeah, check out domanlearning.com. I hope that's helpful for you. All right, let's see. Oh, Sandra is going back to what I was discussing before about visual tracking. How many times in a day would you do the visual tracking activity? So it depends on the child's age and their ability, but generally somewhere between 2 to 5 times a day, 2 to 5, depending on the child's age and ability. Yeah. I'd say at least 2 times just to make sure that you're doing it consistently. And then maybe up to 5 times if a child's really able to focus and if parents have the time to do that. So Sandra is saying, what about an appointment in Philadelphia or Miami? So Sandra, Philadelphia appointments are basically available, throughout the year at different times. Now, sometimes our team is traveling. So, and then Miami is specifically going to be in February. Sandra, after this Q&A, send us a direct message. Like I said to the other mother, send us a direct message and we'll be able to get for you the exact weeks, for example, in February that we'll be in Miami, because I don't know off the top of my head. And also we could send you some Philadelphia appointment options as well. Colleen, anything you want to add to that about appointments around the world?
So they are filling up faster and faster. That's something really to keep in mind. So now that you've mentioned the dates and things for 2025, I really recommend that parents look into it. I know how easy it is. The days go by and you think, oh, I wanted to do that. And there's lots that we can do between now and the time when your appointment is. So that's something to keep in mind as well, that there are things that we need for the appointment, but there's a lot of help that you can have even leading up to that time, so you can begin to see some forward momentum, which is exciting. So, yeah.
Well, and just to give an example of how quickly the appointments are filling up, we recently had to tell a family, I think, that they couldn't have an appointment until the end of November. Something like, so sometimes we are booking out like 2.5 months in advance. And the reason for that is we can only see a certain number of families in a week. And, obviously we want to see a certain number of families in our clinic each week and maintain the quality for every family that's coming. So it's an important reason to book things in advance. Thanks, Colleen.
You bet.
And Colleen, if after this Q&A, the parents send us direct messages, you'll be able to answer them.
I will be the one answering you. So yes, please send us the direct message and we'll get right back to you.
Thanks, Colleen.
You bet.
All right. Let's see if we've got any other questions on Instagram. So I have a question here about teaching another language to a child that is not the native language. Like, how would you go about doing that? So, well, the first thing is, if you are able to speak a foreign language, speak it to your child. So for example, let's say you speak English and Spanish, but maybe Spanish is your native language, not English. I would recommend to the family to speak the second language in the home to the child, which honestly is the complete opposite of what most parents are told. Most parents are told that you should only speak to your child in one language. And that's really bad advice, because many professionals believe in a myth, which is they think that if a child hears more than one language in their home, it'll confuse the child. It'll, harm the child's comprehension and hold back their speech. And by the way, there's not any scientific evidence that backs that up. I've never seen one piece of research that's ever been performed that shows that. In fact, almost any research that's been done shows that learning multiple languages at the same time is beneficial for comprehension and speech development. And the reason for that is the more languages you hear, it increases the linguistic environment of the child, right? So if you hear 2 languages, you're hearing double the amount of vocabulary. You're able to speak in 2 different languages. So it's more stimulating for the child. And when you give a child more stimulation, their comprehension is going to be better. And so, and usually it's only people who speak one language who ever give that advice. You'll never see someone who's bilingual say, oh, it confuses kids, because they know they grew up in a bilingual home. They know they're not confused at all. So it's, one of the things we tell parents is your child will only be confused by languages that you don't teach to them. That's the most important thing. So the first thing that I would say is speak to your child in all the languages that you know. So for example, this mom is asking about teaching German. If you speak German, speak it to your kid, because actually speaking to your child in a language is the best way for them to learn it. That's the number one tool, more than teaching your child cards in that language. It's speaking to them. Now, if you do not speak the language, or if you speak the language but you want to kind of give your child more stimulation in that language, I would do it through pictures and written words, right? So for example, imagine if I was teaching English as a foreign language, right? I would show the child a picture and teach the child the word in the foreign language, right? So I would say banana, and then I would show the word written, like banana, right? And so what this does is it gives the child 2 different forms of that word in the language, the picture form, so they understand exactly what it is we're talking about, and then the written form, which helps develop their reading ability and also their comprehension. So for example, again, here I've got a picture of a pear. Now, let's say I was teaching Italian, right? I would say pera, which is the word for pear in Italian, and then I would show the written word for that picture. And so similar to the rules of the Doman Method reading program, I would show those words, maybe these categories 3 times in a day to a child for about 5 days. So the child would see it 15 total times, and then I would retire it and add new cards. But using images and words are a really great way of increasing a child's vocabulary in a foreign language. I hope that's helpful. All right, let's see. I'll give everyone, I think I have time for one more question if someone wants to get in a last one. And I'm just going to quickly look through and make sure I answered all the questions that have come in so far. Oh, you're welcome, Francesca. I'll give everyone one more minute. All right, while I'm seeing if there's a last question, Colleen, I'll bring you up one last time. Any final announcements you'd like to make, Colleen?
Well, our next course in English begins on November 4th. Before that, we are presenting a seminar, Is the Doman Method Right for My Family? So we'll be posting an announcement about the date and time to our Instagram. Keep an eye out for that. That's a free webinar. Spencer presents it primarily. Sometimes we get Douglas as well. And it's an excellent breakdown of what is the Doman Method and, would it be appropriate? I think everybody who tunes in for this session is already on board with us, but it can be very helpful even for family members who are wondering if this is a good idea, because that's fair. Everybody has their own process. So I would recommend that. But yeah, the November course is coming up, and again, I cannot emphasize enough. Things are really starting to gear up now that the summer's over. Everybody's in back to school, back to life mode. So things are filling up quickly. So please contact us if you have any questions or if you're interested.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Colleen. And thanks everyone for joining. And by the way, for anyone who's joining in late, please make sure to go back and watch, the first part of today's presentation, which was Victory Day, where I took 3 different children and talked about their gains while on the program. All right, everyone, have a really good rest of your week. Happy learning, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Spencer.